The emergency alert woke Commander James Walker from his sleep at exactly 300 hours. Red warning lights flashed across his quarters aboard the Earth Defense Station Yama, casting eerie shadows on the metal walls. He grabbed his uniform and was dressed before the second alert could sound. "Report," he barked as he entered the station's command center. The night crew stood around the main display screen, their faces lit by its blue glow. None of them spoke. They simply pointed at the readings. Walker's eyes widened. The radar signature was impossible. A ship bigger than anything humans had ever built was sitting at the edge of their space. But that wasn't what made his hand shake slightly as he leaned closer to the screen. The ship's identification beacon was broadcasting Earth military codes, codes that belonged to no known vessel in the fleet. "How long has it been there?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension building in his chest. The war with the Meridian Empire had ended just 6 months ago. They couldn't handle another conflict so soon. "First appeared 30 minutes ago, sir," Lieutenant Rogers answered, his young face pale in the screen's glow. "Just blinked into existence. No warp signature, no jump trace. Nothing. It's just there." Walker studied the numbers scrolling across the screen. The ship was massive, at least 3 kilometers long. Earth's largest battleships barely reached 1 kilometer, but the energy readings were what really caught his attention. They were off the charts, showing power levels that should have been impossible with current technology. "Have you tried hailing them?" "Yes, sir. Multiple frequencies, all standard protocols. We get nothing but static in return." Rogers tapped a few commands into his console, and a burst of white noise filled the command center. But underneath the static, Walker thought he heard something else. A pattern, almost like. "Play that again," he ordered. "Filter out the high frequencies." The static came again, cleaned up this time. There it was, a repeating sequence of beeps and tones that made Walker's blood run cold. It was an old Earth distress signal, one that hadn't been used since before the war. But mixed in with it was something else, something that made no sense. "Sir," Rogers said, his voice shaking slightly. "The date stamp in that signal. It's from 300 years in the future." Before Walker could respond, another alert blared through the command center. The mystery ship was moving. Not toward them, thankfully, but changing its position with a grace that seemed impossible for something its size. The movement revealed more of its hull to their sensors, and the entire command crew gasped. The ship's hull was covered in battle scars, some fresh, others ancient. But what caught everyone's attention were the markings. Earth Defense Force insignia, but not quite right. The designs were similar but more advanced, evolved versions of what they use today. And there, prominently displayed on the bow, was a name, EDF Phantom. "Sir," Rogers called out again, "we're getting new energy readings. The ship's changing." Walker watched in amazement as sections of the hull seemed to repair themselves. Armor plates shifted and reformed, covering damaged areas. It was like watching a living thing heal itself. "Get me Admiral Bennett," Walker ordered. "And contact Earth Defense Command. They need to see this." Within minutes, the command center's main screen split to show both Admiral Bennett's face and the Earth Defense Council chamber. Walker quickly briefed them on the situation, watching their expressions change from skepticism to concern to outright fear. "A ship that size couldn't have been built in secret," Admiral Bennett said, his bushy eyebrows drawn together in thought. "Every shipyard in Earth space is monitored. The resources alone would be impossible to hide." "Could it be alien technology?" one of the council members asked. "Something mimicking our signatures?" "No," Walker replied firmly. "The technology is clearly human in origin, just more advanced, much more advanced." As if to emphasize his point, new sensor data began streaming in. The ship's hull was made of materials that shouldn't exist, alloys that combined organic and metallic properties in ways that defied current metallurgical science. Its drive signature suggested propulsion systems that operated on principles their best physicists had only theorized about. "Commander Walker," Admiral Bennett said, his voice grave, "I'm giving you direct authority over this situation. Assemble a team. That ship needs to be boarded and investigated before the Galactic Council gets wind of this. If they think we've been developing technology this advanced in secret." He didn't need to finish the thought. The Galactic Council's restrictions on technological development were strict, especially for newer member species like humans. If they believed Earth was violating those restrictions, the consequences would be severe. Walker was already making mental notes of who he needed. "I want Chief Engineer Marie Thompson," he said. "She's the best we have at analyzing unknown tech, and a small security team. We don't want to appear threatening." The council members muttered among themselves before nodding agreement. "Granted," the head counselor said. "But Commander, be careful. Something about this situation feels wrong. That ship, it shouldn't exist." 4 hours later, Walker stood in the station's hangar bay, watching his team prep their shuttle. Mary Thompson was running final checks on their scanning equipment, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her movements quick and precise. The security team, just 3 experienced officers, checked their weapons while trying not to look nervous. "All systems ready, Commander," Thompson reported, closing the last equipment case. "Though I'm not sure our scanners will be much use. The preliminary readings from that ship, they don't make sense. It's like looking at technology from another universe, or another time," Walker murmured, thinking about that strange distress signal. He shook the thought away and focused on the mission. "Everyone aboard. Let's go meet our mystery ship." As their shuttle launched from the station, Walker watched the massive form of the Phantom grow larger in their viewport. Up close, it was even more impressive. The hull seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The battle scars were clearly visible now, huge gouges and burns that spoke of terrible conflicts. "Look at that," Thompson breathed, pointing to a particularly massive scar near the ship's bow. "That damage pattern. It's like nothing I've ever seen. What kind of weapon could do that?" "Hopefully, we'll never have to find out," Walker replied, but a nagging feeling in his gut told him otherwise. As their shuttle approached the Phantom's main hangar bay, massive doors slowly opened, revealing a brightly lit interior that seemed to beckon them in. "Sir," the shuttle pilot called out, "we're receiving automated docking instructions. They're in Earth standard format, but there's something odd about the code. It's incredibly complex." "Follow them," Walker ordered. "Take us in slow." As the shuttle glided into the Phantom's hangar bay, Walker couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The bay was immaculate, unlike the scared exterior, with rows of unfamiliar aircraft and equipment that made Thompson's eyes go wide with excitement. "This is impossible," she whispered, her scanner beeping frantically. "These energy readings, this level of technology, we're centuries away from this." The shuttle touched down gently, and Walker took a deep breath. "Stay alert," he ordered his team. "We don't know what we're walking into." As the shuttle's hatch opened with a soft hiss, Walker stepped out onto the deck of a ship that shouldn't exist, carrying questions whose answers he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The air smelled clean and slightly metallic, and the deck thrummed with power beneath his boots. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space as they moved toward the inner doors. Just before they reached them, the static that had been their only communication with the ship suddenly cleared on their comms, replaced by a voice that sounded human but somehow wasn't quite right. "Welcome aboard, Commander Walker," the voice said. "We've been waiting a very long time for you." The inner doors of the Phantom slid open with a soft whisper, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. The lighting was different here, a gentle blue glow that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Walker gestured for his team to stay close as they moved forward. "Your voice recognition patterns match our records perfectly," the strange voice continued through their comms. "Though I suppose they would, considering the circumstances." Thompson's scanner whirred as she swept it across the walls. "Commander, these readings are impossible. The walls, they're not just metal. They're alive, somehow, self-repairing at the molecular level." Before Walker could respond, a hologram flickered to life in front of them. It showed a man in an Earth Defense Force uniform that was both familiar and strange, similar to their own, but with subtle differences that spoke of decades of evolution and design. The hologram smiled, and Walker felt a chill run down his spine. The face was eerily realistic. "I am Admiral Thomas Reid," the hologram said. "Or rather, I'm what's left of him. A digital copy, you might say. One of many that keep the Phantom running." The security team raised their weapons instinctively, but Walker held up his hand. "At ease," he ordered, though his own heart was racing. "You said you've been waiting for us. Why?" The hologram's expression grew serious. "Because history is about to repeat itself. Or rather, it would have, if we hadn't come back to stop it. Walk with me, Commander. There's much to show you, and even more to explain." As they followed the hologram through the ship's corridors, more impossible things revealed themselves. They passed rooms filled with technology that made Thompson gasp and furiously take notes. Weapon systems that could adapt and evolve during battle. Shields that learned from every hit they took. Engines that bent space itself. Every piece of technology you see here breaks at least 3 laws of physics as you know them, Admiral Reid's hologram explained. And all of it was born of desperation. Necessity forced us to abandon old limitations, old ways of thinking. They entered what appeared to be the ship's bridge, but it was unlike any bridge Walker had ever seen. Instead of traditional control stations, the room was filled with swirling holographic displays and interfaces that seemed to respond to thought as much as touch. "The Galactic Council," Walker said, watching the displays dance with information he could barely comprehend. "If they discover this ship." "They already have," Reid interrupted. "Or they will very soon. Your sensors weren't the only ones that detected our arrival. But the Council's reaction is a minor concern compared to what's coming." Thompson, who had been quiet for most of the tour, suddenly spoke up. "These systems, they're designed to fight something specific, aren't they? Something that adapts quickly, that learns from every encounter." The hologram nodded, and the bridge's displays changed to show something that made Walker's blood run cold. It looked like a massive cloud of metallic insects, each one the size of a small ship, moving together with horrible precision. "We called them the Swarm," Reid said quietly. "They appeared first in the outer rim, barely noticed. By the time we understood what they were, it was too late. They consume everything in their path, ships, stations, entire planets, and use the materials to make more of themselves. Every time we found a way to fight them, they adapted. Every weapon we created, they learned to counter. But this ship is different," Walker said, beginning to understand. "It can adapt too." "The Phantom was our last hope," Reid confirmed. "A ship that could evolve faster than the Swarm, that could think and change and grow. We broke every rule in the book to build it, violated every restriction the Council had placed on us. And in the end, it still wasn't enough. Not in our timeline. But perhaps with enough warning, with enough time to prepare." A new alarm suddenly blared through the ship. The holographic displays shifted, showing a familiar sight. 3 Galactic Council warships dropping out of warp near the defense station. "Right on schedule," Reid muttered. "Commander, you have a choice to make. The Council will demand answers. They'll want to know what this ship is, where it came from, how it was built. If they learn the truth, they'll try to destroy us. They fear any technology they can't control." Walker watched the Council ships approach on the display. They were impressive vessels, each one nearly as large as Earth's biggest battleships. But compared to the Phantom, they looked like children's toys. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Walker asked, though he already knew the answer. "Lie," Reid said simply. "Tell them what they need to hear. Because if they stop us, if they destroy this ship or lock away its secrets, humanity won't survive what's coming. The swarm is already on its way. In our timeline, they reached Earth space in less than a decade. We have that long to prepare to build more ships like the Phantom, to give humanity a fighting chance. Thompson, who had been examining one of the bridge's control interfaces, looked up. These designs, with enough time, I could understand them. Replicate them, even. But the Council. The Council's laws exist for a reason, Walker said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was thinking of the war they'd just fought, of how close humanity had come to losing even against a conventional enemy. If this swarm was half as dangerous as Reid claimed. The comm system chimed, announcing an incoming transmission from the Council ships. Walker looked at his team, saw the same understanding in their eyes. They had all sworn oaths to protect Earth, to defend humanity. Sometimes that meant making hard choices. I'll speak to them, Walker said finally. But first, show me everything. If we're going to do this, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Reid's hologram smiled, and the bridge's displays changed again, showing schematics and designs that would revolutionize human technology, if they dared to use them. Welcome to the future, Commander, Reid said. Let's hope we can change it. The next few hours were a blur of information and revelations. Walker learned how the Phantom's impossible hull worked, how its weapons could evolve mid-battle, how its AI crew could think and adapt faster than any organic being. He learned about the horrors of the future they were trying to prevent, about battles lost and worlds consumed by the endless hunger of the swarm. And when the Council representatives finally transported aboard, demanding explanations, Walker was ready. He told them a carefully crafted story about experimental technology and classified research, about a ship designed to test theoretical concepts. He watched their faces, saw their suspicion war with their desire to believe that humans couldn't possibly have advanced so far so quickly. They didn't believe him entirely. He could see that in their eyes. But they also couldn't prove he was lying, and in the complex dance of galactic politics, that was often enough. As the Council representatives left, Walker stood at one of the bridge's windows, watching their ships depart. Behind him, Reid's hologram flickered. They'll be watching us now, Walker said. Every move we make, every ship we build. Let them watch, Reid replied. We don't have to hide everything. Just enough. The seeds have been planted. The real work begins now. Walker nodded, thinking of all the changes that would need to be made, all the preparations that would have to begin in secret. They had a decade at most before the swarm arrived. A decade to turn humanity into something that could survive what was coming. He touched his comm unit, connecting to Earth Defense Command. This is Commander Walker, he said. Request immediate conference with the Defense Council. Priority 1. We need to talk about the future. The next 3 months passed in a blur of secret meetings and hidden preparations. The Phantom remained in orbit around Earth's moon, officially classified as a deep space research vessel. But inside its ever-changing halls, the real work never stopped. Walker stood in the ship's main laboratory, watching Thompson work with a holographic display of the Phantom's defensive systems. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her hands moved with excitement as she manipulated the complex diagrams floating in the air. It's brilliant, she said, not looking up from her work. The whole ship thinks like a living thing. Every time it takes damage, it doesn't just repair itself, it evolves, makes itself stronger. The next time it faces the same weapon, it's already prepared. Like antibodies fighting a disease, Walker said, remembering Reid's explanation. The AI Admiral's hologram appeared beside them, right on cue. Exactly, Reid said. We learned it from the swarm, actually. Every time we destroyed one of their units, the others would adapt. So we built a ship that could do the same thing, only faster. Thompson zoomed in on a particular section of the ship's armor. The metal itself carries memory at the molecular level. It's like nothing we've ever seen before, but I think we could reproduce it. Not exactly the same, but something close enough to work with. Walker nodded slowly. They'd been having more and more conversations like this lately. about which technologies they could safely copy without alerting the Council, about how to disguise their advances as natural progression rather than the quantum leap they really were. A soft chime interrupted them. "Commander," one of the bridge crew's voices came through the comm. "We're picking up something strange at the edge of the solar system. You need to see this." When they reached the bridge, Walker's heart nearly stopped. The main display showed a familiar sight. A cloud of metallic objects, each one about the size of a small shuttle, moving with perfect coordination. "It can't be," he whispered. "Reid said we had years." "It's not the swarm," Reid's hologram said quickly. "Not exactly. This is just a scout group, probably separated from the main body during their journey through dark space. But it's enough to give you an idea of what we're facing." The cloud of objects was moving faster now, heading directly for the outer colonies. Walker watched as they approached an automated mining station near Pluto's orbit. Within seconds, the station was engulfed. When the cloud moved on, nothing remained but floating debris. "They're learning," Reid said grimly. "Analyzing our technology, our defenses. Every bit of data they gather goes back to the main swarm. Then we need to stop them here," Walker said, "before they can report back." He turned to Thompson. "How much of the Phantom's weapons systems have you figured out?" "Enough," she replied, her fingers already dancing across the control interface. "But using them will attract attention. The Council. The Council doesn't matter anymore," Walker cut her off. "If those things reach Earth, if anyone sees what they can do, there'll be panic. We need to handle this quietly." Reid's hologram nodded approvingly. "The Phantom was built for exactly this kind of fight. Shall we show you what it can really do?" The next hour was like nothing Walker had ever experienced. The Phantom moved with impossible grace for something its size, its hull constantly shifting and changing as they approached the scout swarm. The enemy units detected them quickly, breaking off their attack on the mining station to face this new threat. "They recognize us," Reid said, his voice tight. "The basic pattern recognition must be built into all of them. They know we're dangerous." The first attack came like a wave of metallic insects, each one changing shape as it flew, transforming into living weapons. But the Phantom was ready. Its hull rippled, and suddenly thousands of tiny points of light erupted from its surface. Each light found a target, and where they hit, the swarm units simply stopped existing. "Quantum displacement beams," Thompson explained, her eyes glued to the tactical display. "They don't destroy the target. They remove it from our reality entirely. No debris, no radiation, no warning to the others." But the remaining swarm units were learning, adapting their approach. They began to move in complex patterns, making themselves harder to target. Some of them combined, forming larger units with stronger defenses. "Watch this," Reid said with a hint of pride. The Phantom's weapons changed in response, the beams of light transforming into waves of energy that rippled through space like water. Where they touched the swarm units, the smaller ones shattered, and the larger ones began to break apart. "The ship is learning too," Thompson breathed. "It's analyzing their adaptations and countering them in real time. This is beyond anything I imagined." The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, nothing remained of the scout swarm, but a few scattered particles that would look like normal space debris to any observer. But Walker couldn't celebrate. He was thinking about what they'd just seen, about how quickly the enemy had adapted, about how these were just scouts. Somewhere out there, the main swarm was coming, and it would be millions of times larger than this group. "How many?" he asked Reid. "In the main swarm, how many are there?" Reid's hologram flickered slightly. "In our timeline. By the time they reached Earth, their numbers were in the billions. Each one capable of reproducing itself from any material it consumes, each one learning and adapting with every encounter." Thompson had already begun analyzing the battle data. The weapons worked perfectly, but they used enormous amounts of power. "We couldn't build enough ships with this technology to face billions of them." Not in time. No, Reid agreed. That's why we need to be smarter. The Phantom isn't just a warship. It's a template, a proof of concept. Its technology can be adapted, simplified, mass-produced. But we need to start now. Walker looked at the tactical display, at the empty space where the scout swarm had been. They'd won this battle easily enough, but the real war hadn't even begun. And somewhere out there, the main swarm was moving through the darkness between stars, growing, learning, preparing. He opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. "This is Commander Walker. We've just had our first contact with the enemy. Requesting immediate implementation of Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega was the emergency plan they developed over the past 3 months, a complete reorganization of Earth's military and industrial capabilities, disguised as a standard defense modernization program. Now they had proof it wasn't just theory. The threat was real, and it was closer than they'd thought. "It's starting," Reid said quietly, "just like before. But this time, we're ready. This time, we have a chance." Walker wasn't so sure. They'd won their first battle, but at what cost? The Phantom's weapons would have been detected by every sensor array in the system. The Council would have questions, and somewhere out there, the main swarm was coming. He looked at Thompson, saw the same determination in her eyes that he felt. They had work to do, and precious little time to do it. The future was changing, but whether it was changing enough remained to be seen. 6 months after their encounter with the scout swarm, Earth's orbital shipyards were working at full capacity. Walker watched from the Phantom's observation deck as another prototype vessel took shape against the backdrop of stars. It wasn't as advanced as the Phantom, but it carried enough of the future ship's technology to make it a formidable weapon. "That's the 12th one this month," Thompson said, joining him at the window. She looked tired but satisfied. "The production teams are getting faster. They're starting to understand the basic principles of the adaptive metals." Walker nodded, but his attention was on a different site, the Galactic Council observation ship that had taken up position near Earth's moon. It had been there for 3 weeks, watching everything they did. "They're getting suspicious," he said quietly. "The Council representative is demanding another inspection of our facilities tomorrow." "Let them look," Thompson replied with a small smile. "The outer hulls are all standard alloys. Nothing that breaks their precious regulations. They can't scan deep enough to see what's underneath." The Phantom's internal sensors pinged, and Reid's hologram appeared beside them. "We have a problem," the AI Admiral said without preamble. Long-range detection grid just picked up something. Multiple signals, approaching from the direction of the Carina Nebula. Walker's blood ran cold. "How many?" "Thousands. Maybe millions. They're still too far out for exact numbers. But the pattern matches what we saw before. It's them. The main swarm." Thompson was already moving toward the bridge, her fingers flying over her portable display. "How long do we have?" "At their current speed? 2 months, maybe less. They're moving faster than they did in our timeline. The scout group must have sent back more data than we thought." Walker followed Thompson, his mind racing. They weren't ready. The new ships were barely tested, their crews still learning how to use the hybrid technology. They needed more time. On the bridge, the main display showed a real-time map of the swarm's approach. It looked like a massive dark cloud moving through space, consuming everything in its path. As they watched, it engulfed a small rogue planet that had strayed too close. Within minutes, the planet was gone, its mass converted into more swarm units. "We need to warn the Council," Walker said finally. "We can't fight this alone. If we tell them everything, they'll try to stop us," Thompson argued. "They'll say our technology is too dangerous, that we're violating their laws. They might even try to shut down our shipyards. Better to ask forgiveness than permission." Reid's hologram added, "In our timeline, the Council debated for months while worlds died. By the time they decided to act, it was too late." A new alert flashed across the display. The swarm had changed course slightly, moving to intercept a small colony world in their path. 5,000 human settlers lived there, unknowing of the danger approaching them. Walker made his decision. Navigation, set course for the colony. Maximum speed. Thompson, I want every weapon system at full power. Reid, send word to Earth. Tell them to begin full evacuation of the outer colonies. Priority 1. The Council ships will detect our movement, Thompson warned. Let them follow if they want, Walker replied. They're about to see exactly what the Phantom can do. The massive ship moved with its usual impossible grace, crossing the distance to the colony in hours instead of days. As they approached, the swarm detected them. The cloud of living machines changed shape, forming into attack formations they'd seen before. But this time was different. This time, there were millions of them. Multiple Council ships dropping out of warp, the sensor officer reported. They're demanding we stand down and explain our presence here. Send them the sensor data, Walker ordered. Let them see what's coming. There was a long moment of silence on all channels as the Council ships processed what their sensors were telling them. Then the emergency bands exploded with chatter. This is Council Overseer Williams to all ships. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. We are detecting an unknown hostile force approaching the colony. All vessels are hereby authorized to engage under Emergency Protocol 7. Thompson looked up from her station. They're going to get themselves killed. Their weapons won't even scratch those things. She was right. The first wave of swarm units hit the Council ships like a tide of metal. Their energy weapons passed harmlessly through the constantly adapting defenses. One Council ship vanished in a flash of light as the swarm began to consume it. Now, Walker commanded, show them what this ship can really do. The Phantom's hull came alive, shifting and changing as its weapons deployed. The quantum displacement beams that had worked against the scouts were just the beginning. New weapons emerge. Gravity lances that torn swarm units apart at the atomic level, temporal disruption fields that trapped hundreds of units in endless loops of causality, adaptive energy webs that learned and evolved with each passing second. Council ships, clear the area. Walker broadcast. Fall back to the colony. We'll handle this. For nearly an hour, space itself seemed to warp and twist as the Phantom engaged the swarm. Every time the enemy adapted to one weapon, the ship created two more. Every time they found a way through its defenses, the hull changed to counter them. But there were so many, even as thousands of swarm units were destroyed, thousands more took their place. The Phantom's power reserves were dropping, its adaptive systems struggling to keep up with the endless variations of the attack. We can't beat them all, Thompson reported, her voice tense. There are too many. We need. She stopped as new sensor contacts appeared. The prototype ships from Earth, all 12 of them, dropping out of warp around the Phantom. They weren't as powerful, not as advanced, but they carried enough of the future technology to make a difference. All ships, coordinate your attacks, Walker ordered. Follow the Phantom's lead. Target the control units, the larger ones in the back. Don't let them adapt to any single weapon for too long. The battle that followed would be talked about for generations. 13 ships against millions of living machines, fighting with technology that shouldn't exist. The colony below watched in awe as space itself seemed to burn. When it was over, the remains of the swarm retreated, leaving behind a graveyard of twisted metal and broken machines. The Phantom and its sister ships had won, but the cost had been high. 3 of the prototypes were destroyed, and the others were badly damaged. But they had proven something important. The swarm could be beaten. Council ships are hailing us, the comm officer reported. They're demanding explanations, and Earth Defense Command is reporting multiple new swarm signatures approaching from different vectors. This was just the first wave. Walker looked at Reid's hologram, saw the grim determination there. They had won their first real battle, but the war was just beginning. And now the Council knew exactly what they were capable of. Open a channel to all ships, he ordered, Council and Earth vessels alike. They need to understand what we're facing, what we need to do to survive. The future was changing, but the real fight was still to come. And this time, humanity wouldn't face it alone. 1 month after the battle at the colony, the space around Earth had changed beyond recognition. The orbital shipyards now worked around the clock, protected by a mix of Council and Earth ships. The secret was out, and survival had become more important than rules and regulations. Walker stood in the Phantom's war room with both human and Council representatives, studying the massive holographic display of the galaxy. Red dots showed confirmed swarm sightings, and there were hundreds of them now, all moving with terrible purpose toward the heart of human space. The main body of the swarm will reach us in 3 weeks, Reid's hologram explained to the gathered leaders. What you've seen so far are just the advance forces. The real army is beyond anything you can imagine. Then we run, one of the Council members suggested. Evacuate Earth, fall back to the core worlds. The Council fleet could protect. No, Thompson interrupted. She looked different now, harder, more determined. We've seen that future. The swarm doesn't stop. It never stops. Either we beat them here, or everyone dies. Everything dies. The Phantom's sensors had detected the true size of the approaching swarm 2 days ago. The numbers were beyond comprehension. Billions upon billions of living machines stretching across light years of space. They had consumed entire star systems on their way to Earth, growing stronger with each world they destroyed. The new ships are helping, Walker said, gesturing to the display. Dozens of green dots showed the positions of vessels built with the Phantom's technology. But we need more. We need everything you can give us. The Council representatives looked at each other. For a moment, Walker thought they would refuse. Then the head counselor stepped forward. The laws that restricted your development were made in a time of peace, she said slowly. They were never meant to prevent you from defending yourselves. The Council hereby grants Earth unlimited emergency authorization to produce and deploy whatever weapons you need to stop this threat. Walker nodded grimly. We'll need more than weapons. The Phantom has shown us that the only way to beat the swarm is to be more adaptive than they are. We need to change how we think about everything. Ships, tactics, even space itself. The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparation and innovation. Every shipyard in Council space was redirected to build vessels with the Phantom's adaptive technology. Thompson worked with engineers from a dozen worlds, teaching them the principles of self-evolving systems and living metal. The Phantom itself underwent constant modification, its AI crew pushing the limits of what was possible. Each encounter with swarm scout forces gave them new data, new ways to fight back. But would it be enough? Walker found Reid's hologram on the observation deck the night before the swarm was due to arrive. The AI Admiral was staring at the Earth below, its holographic form flickering slightly. In our timeline, Reid said without turning, the sky was black with them. They came all at once, overwhelming everything we had. We never stood a chance. This time is different, Walker replied. We're ready for them. We're united. The defense plan was unlike anything in military history. 500 ships with varying levels of adaptive technology, arranged in a sphere around Earth. The Phantom would lead the main battle group, while smaller squadrons would target the swarm's control units. Every ship was connected through a network that would let them share adaptations and innovations in real time. The swarm arrived exactly when predicted, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in a wave that seemed to darken the stars themselves. Sensors across the system screamed warnings as millions, then billions of hostile contacts appeared. All ships, battle positions, Walker ordered from the Phantom's bridge. Remember your training. Don't stick to any one attack pattern for too long. Keep moving, keep adapting. We are not dying today. The battle began with a roar of weapons fire that lit up space like a new sun. The swarm came in fast, but the defending ships were ready. Adaptive shields flickered and changed, absorbing attacks that would have vaporized normal vessels. Living metal hulls shifted and flowed, presenting different targets every second. "They're trying to break through Sector 7, Thompson reported from her station. "The Council ships there are holding, but their adaptive systems are still basic." "Phantom actual to Sector 7, Walker commanded. "Fall back to secondary positions. Let them think they found a weak spot." It was a strategy they had developed over the past weeks. Deliberate weak points in their defense that would draw in the swarm units. As thousands of living machines poured through the gap, the trap was sprung. The Phantom and its sister ships unleashed their full power. Space itself seemed to twist and burn as weapons beyond current science tore into the swarm. Quantum displacement beams erased whole squadrons from existence. Temporal weapons trapped others in endless loops of cause and effect. Gravity lances pulled apart the larger units at the atomic level. But the swarm was learning, adapting, evolving. For every 1,000 units destroyed, 10,000 more took their place. The defending ships were taking damage now, their adaptive systems struggling to keep up with the endless variations of attack. "Power reserves at 60%, Thompson called out. "We can't maintain this level of defense forever." Walker watched as two of their ships vanished in bright flashes of light, consumed by the swarm. The enemy was learning faster than before, finding ways through their defenses, if they couldn't find a way to end this soon. Then Reid's hologram snapped upright. "The pattern," he said suddenly. "Look at the pattern." Walker saw it too. The swarm wasn't just attacking randomly. They were moving in a complex but recognizable sequence, like a dance or a piece of music. "It's a language," Thompson breathed, her fingers flying over her console. "The way they move, the attacks, it's all part of a larger pattern. They're not just fighting us. They're trying to communicate." "Can we respond?" Walker asked. "Better," Reid replied. His hologram flickered as he connected directly with the Phantom systems. "We can sing their song back to them." The Phantom's weapons changed again, but this time they didn't just destroy. Each blast, each energy pulse, each gravitational distortion was part of a larger pattern. The ship wasn't just fighting anymore. It was speaking in the swarm's own language. Other ships picked up the pattern, adding their voices to the symphony of light and energy. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. The swarm units stopped their attack, hanging motionless in space. Then something impossible happened. The swarm began to change. Individual units started breaking apart, reforming into different shapes. The cloud of living machines pulled back, creating a space between themselves and Earth. "They're evolving," Thompson said in wonder. "Not just adapting to fight, but actually changing what they are." The swarm units were transforming, becoming something new. The mindless drive to consume and destroy was being replaced by something else. Curiosity, intelligence, even creativity. "We didn't just show them how to adapt," Reid said quietly. "We showed them there was more than one way to evolve." The battle ended not with a final explosion, but with a beginning. The swarm withdrew, not in defeat but in transformation. They left behind a changed galaxy, one where humanity had proven itself capable of not just surviving, but teaching even their greatest enemy a new way to exist. The Phantom hung in space above Earth, its impossible hull reflecting the light of a new dawn. Walker looked at his crew, human and AI alike, and smiled. They had changed history, not just by fighting, but by finding a way to communicate, to understand, to grow. "Well," he said to Reid's hologram, "what do we do now?" The AI Admiral smiled. Now we build the future, together." And in the depths of space, the transformed swarm moved outward, carrying with them the lesson they had learned from a ship that shouldn't have existed, that the greatest evolution comes not from destruction, but from understanding.